Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Her laughter floated through the room like warm honey, soft and tempting. The glow from the dim chandelier danced across her skin, highlighting the delicate curve of her neck as she leaned closer. His cologne subtle woodsy wrapped around her senses before she even realized how near he was. She turned and there he stood, inches away, his eyes holding hers with a weight that made her pulse stumble. The music hummed low, but the silence between them was louder charged. A brush, barely a whisper of his fingers, grazed her wrist as he reached for the glass beside her. It wasn't an accident. She felt it like fire trailing her veins, a jolt of awareness that stole her breath. Her lips parted, unspoken words trembling at the edge, but his smile's slow knowing stilled them. "Careful," he murmured, voice rich like velvet, his breath warm against her ear. "Spill a drink like that and you'll owe me more than an apology." She exhaled, shaky, pretending to laugh, but her body betrayed her heart pounding so loud she swore he could hear it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not with him. Not tonight. And yet the way his gaze lingered, the heat pooling in her chest, told her that something had already begun. Then another voice, deep familiar, her husband's voice. She stiffened. Slowly, she turned her head, her smile faltering as realization hit like a strike of lightning. But it was too late because the other woman was nowhere in sight. And her husband wasn't alone. Her pulse still hadn't steadied. Even as she forced a smile and turned toward the familiar voice, her thoughts were spinning. Her husband stepped into the room, his broad shoulders filling the doorway. But it wasn't just him. It was the way his eyes swept past her to the man standing too close and the flicker of something unreadable that crossed his face. For a fleeting second, guilt prickled under her skin. But then the memory of the past few months came crashing back. The silence at dinner, the way his touch had turned perfunctory, the late nights at work that never came with explanations. She had tried to ignore it, to pretend the distance wasn't growing like a crack in glass. Until tonight, until this man. She didn't even know why she felt this drawn to him. Maybe it was the way he noticed her. Really noticed. His glances weren't hurried or distracted. They lingered, deliberate, as though he was reading thoughts she hadn't spoken aloud. When his fingers brushed her wrist, it wasn't just a touch. It was a question, an invitation she couldn't name, but couldn't walk away from. The man stepped back now, slow, almost reluctant, his jaw tightening in a way that made her wonder if he was masking something, too. A flicker of tension pulsed in the air, sharp and quiet. As her husband moved closer, he slipped an arm around her waist, warm but oddly heavy, like a claim more than an embrace. She smiled because that's what wives do. But deep inside something shifted. "Having a good time?" her husband asked lightly, though his eyes darted once more to the man beside her. "Perfect," she said, her voice too soft, too careful. The man, her husband's best friend, offered a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was gone in a heartbeat, but she saw it. And for one dizzying second, she imagined a life where that smile was real, where the warmth she felt from his nearness wasn't wrong, wasn't dangerous. But reality slammed back when another laugh drifted from the other room. Her, the other wife, carefree, oblivious. Or maybe not. Maybe she knew. Maybe they all did. And this night was the start of something no one could undo. The music swelled, and she felt his eyes on her again, pulling her in, even as her husband's grip tightened. Her heart thundered, each beat whispering the same forbidden thought. What happens if I give in? And that was when she saw it, his hand brushing against hers again. So quick, no one else noticed. But she felt it, and she didn't pull away. The room was alive with conversation and soft music, but all she could hear was her own heartbeat. Her husband's hand rested on her hip like a warning, and yet her gaze betrayed her, darting to the man across from her, the man who had brushed against her twice tonight and set fire to nerves she thought were numb. She laughed at something her husband said. A sound too bright to be real because beneath it, her thoughts were tangled in danger. Every time her eyes met his, it was like a door opening to a room they weren't supposed to enter. And now it felt like they were standing right at the threshold. Across the room, the other wife appeared, draped in elegance and confidence. She smiled at them, unaware or maybe pretending not to see the tension that was growing like smoke. The woman felt the weight of her own guilt sink deeper. Yet another part of her, wild and restless, rebelled. Why should she feel guilty for wanting to feel alive? He moved, then slow, purposeful, crossing the distance under the guise of polite conversation. His voice, low and rich, brushed against her like a secret. "You look different tonight," he said, his eyes locking onto hers. There was no mistaking his meaning. Her breath caught. Her husband turned to grab another drink. His attention fractured for the briefest moment. And in that heartbeat, the man's hand grazed hers again, this time lingering, his thumb tracing an invisible line that sent shivers racing through her. She froze, pulse roaring in her ears. One step closer, and there would be no return. Then her husband looked back and she snapped her hand away. Too quick, too guilty. The man only smirked, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. A promise, a challenge. From across the room, the other wife was watching now. Not smiling, not speaking, just watching. And suddenly, the air felt thinner, the stakes sharper. Tonight wasn't just an innocent evening anymore. It was a loaded game, and someone was about to make the first move. The night deepened, shadows stretching longer across the polished floors as laughter faded to murmurs in the other room. She slipped away under the excuse of fresh air, her pulse pounding with every step down the hallway. She told herself she just needed space, distance. But when the cool glass of the balcony door met her fingertips, another presence followed. Quiet, deliberate. She didn't turn. She didn't need to. She could feel him behind her. The heat of his nearness cutting through the night breeze. "You always leave when it gets loud." His voice murmured deep and velvet soft, threading its way through her restraint. She turned slowly, heart thumping so hard she thought he might hear it. He was close, too close, and the dim golden light from inside spilled across his face, catching the sharp lines of his jaw, the intent in his eyes. "I needed air," she said, her voice barely holding steady. Or maybe, he stepped closer, his shadow mingling with hers. "You needed this." The words sank deep, and for a breathless second, everything stopped. The party, the music, the world. Just his eyes locking onto hers, pulling her into a place she knew she shouldn't go. She should leave. She should walk back into the safety of that crowded room. But when his hand lifted, hesitant at first, then sure, and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, her knees weakened, his touch burned, not from heat, but from meaning, from the promise that nothing would be the same after this moment. Then a sound. Footsteps coming closer. Her stomach dropped as panic and desire tangled inside her. He didn't move away. Neither did she. The space between them crackled like a live wire, seconds from sparking into something unstoppable. The footsteps grew louder, her husband's voice calling her name. And still, she couldn't look away from him. She froze, heart hammering as her husband's voice drifted closer, steady and unsuspecting. The man didn't step back. If anything, his gaze burned deeper, locking her in place like a secret neither of them could let go. "Say something," he whispered, his breath warm against her cheek just as her husband's shadow spilled across the balcony floor. She opened her mouth, but the words tangled with the racing storm inside her. Then he reached for her hand, bold, unafraid. His fingers wrapped around hers like a vow she hadn't agreed to, but couldn't break. "Everything okay out here?" Her husband's voice cut in, sharp now, tinged with suspicion. She yanked her hand free too fast and turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just needed air," she said softly. But her husband's gaze darted between them, reading the space, the heat that still lingered. His jaw tightened. The silence stretched, dangerous and heavy. And then, before she could stop it, her husband smiled. But it wasn't warm. It was cold. Calculated. Good, he said, stepping closer, his hand brushing her back, because I was hoping the four of us could talk. Her stomach dropped. The four of us. She followed his glance toward the open doorway where the other wife now stood, her silhouette framed in gold light, her eyes fixed on them like blades. The woman felt the ground shift beneath her feet as realization struck. This wasn't a coincidence. The late-night invitations, the way her husband had insisted on tonight, the knowing smirk now curving his lips. He knew he had always known. Her pulse thundered as the other wife stepped forward, her expression unreadable, but her voice low and sharp. So she said, eyes flicking between her and the man who still hadn't moved away. Are we all done pretending? The air fractured. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed until her husband's hand tightened on her waist and the man's fingers brushed hers again, bold, defiant, like a spark in dry grass. One word could burn everything down. The silence shattered like glass. Her husband's smile didn't fade. It sharpened as he stepped closer, his hand resting possessively on her lower back. Pretending, she whispered, voice cracking under the weight of the moment. The other wife moved forward now, heels clicking against the marble floor as her eyes bore into the man by her side, the man who still hadn't let go of the woman's hand. Tell her, she said coldly, gaze cutting like a blade, his jaw tensed. And then he spoke. I can't keep this secret anymore, his voice low but steady. I wanted her before tonight. I've wanted her for months. The words landed like a blow, stealing the breath from the room. The woman felt her knees weaken, shame and desire colliding until she couldn't tell which was stronger. Her husband's fingers dug deeper into her waist, and then he laughed, a sound that sent chills down her spine. Finally honest, he said. Guess it's my turn. Her heart pounded as his smile curved into something darkly amused. You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't see the looks, the touches? I wanted this to happen. She stared at him, numb, as he leaned closer and whispered in her ear. I wanted to see how far you'd go. Her stomach churned, fury mixing with humiliation. But before she could speak, the other wife snapped. Enough games. Her voice cracked like a whip. And when the woman looked at her, she saw the truth blazing in those eyes. Betrayal, yes, but something else, too. Because the other wife wasn't just angry at him. She was angry at her. The man let go of her hand at last, but not before squeezing it. A silent question, a plea. She yanked it away like it burned. Are we done? Her husband asked lightly, as though the world hadn't just tilted on its axis. No, she said, her voice breaking but strong. She turned, eyes wet, shoulders trembling, and walked past them all, the cold night air biting at her skin like judgment. Behind her, voices rose. Accusations, confessions, sharp-edged words slicing the night apart. But she didn't stop, because if she stayed, she would shatter. And yet, when she reached the door, she felt it. His presence, his voice, low and raw. Don't leave. Her hand froze on the handle. Her breath hitched. And for one final dangerous second, she didn't move. She stood frozen at the door, her hand trembling against the cool glass. Behind her, voices clashed like breaking waves, accusations, regrets, all the chaos of what had been hidden too long. She didn't want to hear any of it. She wanted to breathe. She wanted to stop feeling like her heart was being torn in two. Then she heard it. Soft, not loud like the others, not angry, just one voice, low and raw, threading through the storm. Please don't leave. She turned slowly. And there he was, his eyes stripped of the smirk, the teasing confidence, everything but truth. The man who had set her world spinning now stood vulnerable, hands open as though offering her something more than just desire, something real. For one long moment, the world shrank to that space between them, the crackle of night air, the hush of distant city lights, and the pounding in her chest. I can't, she whispered, her voice breaking. Everything is ruined. He stepped closer, cautious like a man afraid of breaking something precious. Not ruined, he said. Not if we choose differently. Not if this means something more than tonight. Tears stung her eyes, but not from pain this time. From the terrifying, dizzying hope blooming inside her. Because she saw it in his face, the promise that this wasn't a game, wasn't revenge. It was a confession, the kind that could change everything. He reached for her hand again, but this time there was no secrecy, no hesitation, just honesty. She let him take it. Her fingers curled into his like they'd been waiting for this moment forever. Behind them, the argument faded into the background, voices dimming as if the night itself had chosen to shield them. She didn't look back. She didn't care because for the first time in months, maybe years, she felt alive. His forehead pressed against hers, breath mingling with hers. And in that quiet closeness, all the noise fell away. No more pretending, he murmured. No more, she breathed back, and then his lips found hers in a kiss that tasted like redemption, slow, deep, the kind that rewrites every rule and leaves no room for doubt. The city lights glittered like 1,000 silent witnesses as they held each other. The future unknown, but theirs to claim. And somewhere inside, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning.